Welcome to the Saturday Night Live show with Tom Zutaut. No, I'm just kidding. This is the Motley Crue Shout at the Devil 40th anniversary box set unboxing. As I know many of you have seen the videos leading up to this, I made it to the cabin in case you were wondering. There is no air conditioning in the cabin, so it is very hot. Very hot. And you know, one thing, and a lot of people were asking this question, and just in case you just randomly clicked on this and you got it, my name is Tom Zutaut, and I am the guy who found Motley Crue and signed them to their record deal at Elektra Records. Pete Davidson Plays Me in the Dirt, which is a movie about the early Motley Crue days on Netflix. And a lot of people have asked, and I'm just going to answer this question right away. Tell all your friends to join in and check it out. So I'm going to get into the unboxing shortly, but I want to wait for everybody to get logged in. But a lot of people have asked me, why TikTok, right? Why do TikTok? And I'm going to be honest, because, you know, I was very hesitant to do TikTok, to be honest with you, but my wife kept telling me to do it, and it turns out that she's right. And the reason I'm going to tell you is that it's interesting, you know, like I look at my analytics, and, you know, like my YouTube channel, Can You Get Me In? It skews a little older than TikTok. You know, my Facebooks and Instagram skew a little older. Instagram is sort of in the middle. But TikTok really has a lot of 20-somethings and early 30-somethings. And it turns out that these, you know, from teenagers to, you know, mid-30s are really interested in 80s and 90s music. And I don't think that there's a better person to talk to than 80s or 90s music, since I created a whole bunch of it. So, you know, believe it or not, you know, I'm your go-to guy when it comes to the 80s and 90s music, and I can answer your questions. You know, I won this Hard Rock Radio Hall of Fame award because they calculated that like 68.4% of all classic rock songs played on the radio were bands that I either found or worked with. So I think that you know, that's interesting, and you know, that's why I'm your go-to guy. You know, I can you know, answer your questions. You know, I interacted with a lot of these bands and made records or gave them advice, and you know, I even made a record with Def Leppard, Euphoria. So believe it or not, I was actually a pretty shy kid, and you know, speaking didn't come naturally to me, you know, in front of people, and it took a lot for me to get comfortable, and it's taken a lot for me to get comfortable on TikTok. And you know, it's one thing when you make a video and you can edit it, but this is you know, if I make mistakes, you know, everybody's gonna see them. And anyway, believe it or not, I was a shy kid, and so I'm saying to all you shy kids out there, don't give up on your dream. I mean, you know, if I can do it, you can do it. If you're looking for pictures, you know, it's hard to find pictures of me back in the day with all these bands, because I was that shy kid. I was like, I felt like the Wizard of Oz. I was the guy behind the scenes that was, you know, trying to make it all work and get it out into the world, you know. And I call it capturing lightning in a bottle. And one day I'll be doing some radio stuff, playing some songs on the radio, do some DJing, once I figure out how to play the music through a live here on TikTok. Anyway, I want to get into Motley Crue and just talk a little bit about, you know, how this almost 19-year-old kid was driving down Sunset Strip, and he just stumbled into Motley Crue. And at the time, the music that was really popular was like Haircut 100 and Flock of Seagulls. I don't know where I ran to, but I saw the billboard at the Whiskey, and it said Motley Crue sold out. And I literally pulled my car over, and I got out of my car, and tried to get into the show, and I couldn't get in. And the lady at the ticket desk got the owner, Mario, and Mario came out and he asked me why he should let me in. And I said to him, I said, Mario, one day I'm going to make your club famous. And he said to me, he said, you got a lot of gumption, kid. Where you from? I said, I'm from Chicago. And he goes, I'm from Chicago. Do you know anybody there? And I said, well, I did some work for Johnny Galgano. And he said, you know Johnny Galgano? And I'm like, yeah, I did some work for him. He goes, well, anybody that did some work for Johnny Galgano is a friend of Johnny's, is a friend of mine. Come on in. So that was how I ended up getting into the show. And the next bit of information that I think is interesting is the scene from The Dirt actually happened, when I was sitting at that booth at the Rainbow trying to sign the band. And Mario also owned the Rainbow as well as the whiskey. So in that booth, that is the booth you want to be in. And if you look into my channels, you'll find a video of that booth. Every band I signed from that booth ended up kicking butt and making the Bacon and Gold and Platinum records. But so I signed the band, and Roy Thomas Baker remixes that first leather record. And I'm going to show you the leather record. Let me pull it up here. I want to show that to you, because that's kind of where it all started. Here's this leather record, and I'm going to stand up and show it to you. So there's the front, there's the back, and I'm going to go ahead and pull it out so I can show you the label. It's a very cool record and a label, like the way they designed it and everything. Now I'm going to stick it back in here. And of course, if you want this record, you're going to have to pay up to $10,000 for it. I can't believe what they're selling for. It makes me mad I didn't keep that box of 25 I had back in the day. It came with this insert, and it had all the lyrics on the back. So that's the original leather record that led to it all. And I had to, in order to get that leather record, I had to buy them out of a distribution agreement with Green World Distribution. And Green World was actually, the guy that was in charge of the Motley Crue account was a guy named Alan Niven. That name may sound familiar. He's got a book out recently. And he was the guy that negotiated for us to buy the distribution rights on that first record. And this is what we ended up doing with that record right here. Let me figure out how to get it to you. Here we go. And anyway, okay. Someone wants to know if I worked with country singers. And I'm going to answer your question right now. And here's the Elektra record, and it was remixed by under Roy Thomas Baker's supervision. There we go. With Gordon Fordyce, who's a great dude. As far as country goes, the answer to that question is yes. I worked with Hank Williams Jr., I worked with Eddie Rabbitt. In fact, I don't have it with me here in the cabin, but I've got gold and platinum records from Eddie Rabbitt. And I was actually the guy that got Eddie Rabbitt crossed over to pop radio. So I Love a Rainy Night, that was one of the first country records that crossed over pop. Not counting some early Dolly Parton stuff and whatever. But my dad actually was born and grew up and was raised in a holler in Beckley, West Virginia. And he played a lot of country music for me, especially like, Hank Williams, the original Hank, from the 50s. So I had that background. I then played classical music when I was in school, and it turns out that my dad playing me country music and classical music really, ended up being good because of certain mathematics and hearing stuff and being able to recognize certain things that could be popular. So let's talk about the personalities of Motley Crue a little bit. Travis, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're here with me tonight, that you made it. Let's talk about Mick Mars. So, Mick Mars is a cool dude. It hurts me that he's not in the band anymore, and I tell you what, when John 5 first replaced him, I was kind of aggroed, and I went to the stadium shows, and the sound was really thin, and it wasn't great. But I'll tell you what happened. Went to the Hollywood Takeover on Sunset Strip, no backing tracks, live in the club, like when I first found the band. And John 5 blew me away. One of my favorite moments, which you can watch on my YouTube channels, my TikToks, it's everywhere, is when John 5 lifted up Baby Crue, because I interviewed some folks, and you can see that too. That it was 3 generations of Crue fans, and the dad was actually at the kegger party where Nikki and Tommy found Vince as a cover band at a kegger party. This guy was there. His daughter loves the Crue. His son loves the Crue. His daughter married a dude that loves the Crue, and they had a baby Crue. I got to give a shout out to my brother Andrew Jameson. You guys need to check Andrew out, man. His music is killer. He's like a country rock dude. And I'm glad you're here, Andrew. That means a lot to me. Killer. Go check out his music. He's won some awards from, the Ryman and the Grand Ole Opry. They got a name for these awards. Andrew, go ahead and say what those, they're called the Josie Awards. Check it out. He is awesome. I'm excited about helping him in any way that I can. But I was starting to talk about Mick Mars. And so, when I first met Mick Mars, he's so understated, right? And what you don't realize is he's playing 3 parts at once, the way he's doing his fingers on the frets. And, it's like he's playing rhythms and power chords and leads and fills all at once. He's got a power chord underneath, he's playing on top of it. And it's actually harder for one dude to play what Mick Mars plays than you think. The other thing that blew me away about Mick is that he had this tone from hell, man. Like, nobody had tone like him. And I always wondered how he did it. And, like the other members of Motley Crue, Mick was in excess in the early days. And I know if you've seen The Dirt on Netflix that Mick is like the reasonable guy that doesn't do the crazy shit. But trust me, in the very beginning, he did it. And he had this thing called a beller, and it was like, a bunch of hard liquors into that like syrupy stuff that'll knock you back. And he would go crazy, and his girlfriend would get mad at him and get thrown out of the house. And and anyway, we moved Mick into my apartment, my brother and I, Brad, and we moved him in, and over this couple of months, he got off drink and his vices, and he started to like mess with his amp heads and stuff. And I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, you know what my secret is it's all about my tone. He goes, no one can get my tone because I go through my amps and I rebuild them from scratch with like A-grade components. And I've learned a few tricks. And Frank Hannon from Tesla's got some modded heads, some high watt mods that a guy in San Francisco did. And I mean, they're the best sounding high watts I ever heard. So, Mick's Marshalls were the best sounding Marshalls I'd ever heard, with his mods. I see that we've got Ula Fayette joined. Hi, Courtney. And we've got Chevy on, and Chevy is that killer guitar player that plays guitar with Andrew. I appreciate you guys getting on. I haven't unboxed yet. I'm trying to wait to unbox when everybody gets on. I mean, it's a holiday weekend. Hey, if anybody watched the Ozzy thing and you can give me a rundown on that. I wasn't able to watch it. For some reason, I couldn't get the stream here in the cabin. I'd love to hear from you if any of you watched that. Which band was the best? How was Ozzy? What songs did Ozzy sing when Black Sabbath hit the stage? And all that kind of stuff. So back to Mick, I mean, he was like the amp genius and the voice of reason in the band. And I think you don't really get the amp genius guy, in the Dirt movie, but you do get that he was the level-headed guy. And heck, I mean, he named the band. He and I always had a really good relationship all the way through. And he is a great dude. And I give John 5 kudos because I know a lot of Crue fans are still mad that John 5 is in there. But I got to tell you, and I talked to his tech, and his tech told me that John 5, after the stadium tours, he worked really hard to retool his gear to get that sound and learn how to play all that stuff at once, that it would take 3 guitar players to play. And it was evident at those Hollywood takeover shows, all of them, the Troubadour, the Roxy, the Whiskey. Now I want to talk a little bit about Tommy Lee because, Tommy is crazy. We all know that he's crazy, for sure. But, Tommy, he's got a weakness, and it's called drugs and alcohol. And when he goes on a binge, I mean, he's beating some of his wives up. He can get violent when he's on a binge. Now, fortunately for me, I was never around him when he got on one of those binges. And if he did, he was always like the happy-go-lucky puppy dog, when you got a puppy and it won't stop licking you, that's Tommy Lee, he's like the overexcited puppy that would just love you and lick you to death. And I never personally saw this dark side, but I read about it and I know that it happened. And one thing that was really cool about Tommy is he was very supportive of me, and he and Pam Anderson, I had a chain of Bath and Body Care stores back in the 90s, and Tommy, to support me, he and Pam, they bought all their products at my store, and I thanked them for that. But Tommy, always there for me, a good dude, always the happy guy. And hey, his drumming is second to none. One of the greatest drummers in rock music. I mean, we can argue that there's other great drummers for sure, but he is kick ass. Hi Margie and hi MC. I'm glad you guys are here. I like it. Call all your friends, as they say. So Vince Neil, let's talk about Vince, man. What a voice. But he always had one thing on his mind, and that was women. And I know a lot of you have seen The Dirt. You know that he slept with my girlfriend, and in the negotiation with Netflix, that was one. And people ask me about this all the time, so I'm going to say this. People, this is the deal. It took 6 months of negotiations with Netflix to get what you saw in the movie. That was the least they were willing to go, and the least I was willing to go. And we met not quite in the middle. They got more than I thought they should with Pete's little soliloquy. As he says basically something like, "What I learned from Motley Crue shows is never bring your girlfriends to Motley Crue." And I guess that's true because later Nikki did the same thing Vince did, but it wasn't really my girlfriend, right? It wasn't really my girlfriend. It was someone I had met, and we were dating. It was our second date, and Nikki asked her if she wanted to have sex, and she didn't say no, and so he did, right in front of everybody in the LA Lakers locker room. Later, Nikki apologized to me for it, and we'll talk about my relationship with him shortly, but he apologized to me, and he admitted that, in his drug-crazed frenzy, he was just trying to one-up Vince because Vince had my prior girlfriend, and he figured he'd get that one. But what he didn't know, it was my second day. What did I learn? I learned that that probably wasn't the woman I wanted to take home to my mommy, right? So that was that. And, you know, the sad thing is that, you know, I don't hold any grudges, and I understand now, you know, as a more mature person, that Vince just couldn't help himself. He's a sex addict, and, you know, he would have 2 or 3 women before the show and a couple after, and he was just an animal, you know. That's just part of who he is. And at some point, maybe he and I could talk again, because, you know, after he said in an interview that he had sex with my girlfriend behind my back, and it was a headline on an MTV news story, he and I didn't speak much after that. Even though I went backstage, he was always sequestered in another area while I hung out with the rest of the band. So, but before that, Vince and I had a great relationship, believe it or not. We did. And as far as Nikki Sixx goes, you know, we were 2 kids, right? Nikki had a dream to be a rock star. And believe it or not, when I was 17, I had this dream that I wanted to go find rock stars and make records with them. And both of our dreams came true. And Nikki, I mean, he is the mastermind. I mean, all the comic book personalities in Motley Crue, they were created by Nikki, and he kind of figured out how to do their characters. And then one day a young kid came into my office, and he was an artist that could draw images and cartoons like nobody's business. And all those cartoons you see, the Alistair Fiend mascot, all this stuff, was this kid from San Diego. He now lives up in I think Portland or Seattle. But he was a little genius, and he really, you know, he really, you know, turned Motley Crue into these larger-than-life comic book characters. And then I think it was really cemented with that gatefold jacket I fought so hard for Shout at the Devil. So let's get into, you know, talking about Shout at the Devil before we unbox it. And I just want to give you some, you know, dynamics. And so, you know, initially the band wanted to call this Shout with the Devil. So I'm going to backtrack to about 6 months before I found the band. And I was on tour with a band called Riot. And I was in San Antonio, Texas, and I went to the Alamo. And this Vatican priest said to me, he goes, one day, he said, you're going to need this medallion that's around my neck. I've worn it my whole life. It is imbued with, you know, the powers of white light and good energy and God. And I mean, I kind of laughed and thought, I mean, this guy's probably some psycho, you know. But I kept that medallion. And, you know, the funny thing is that, you know, before we changed it to Shout at the Devil, I would go bring, you know, food and dinners and groceries to Lita Ford and Nikki Sixx in their apartment. And, man, it was 110 degrees in the San Fernando Valley, but it was ice cold in their apartment. And they had painted all the walls black and pentagrams, and it felt demonic, really. Like, I was seeing, like, dark shadows and all kinds of spooky stuff. It's in the Dirt book. You could read about it. Lita doesn't remember it, or she says it never happened. I'm just going to be clear about that. And it's a true story, and I didn't do drugs, so this wasn't a drug thing. But some forks and knives started flying around the room, aimed at me, like I was being attacked. And I remembered this priest had given me this medallion and told me one day I would need it. And all of a sudden, I'm like, you know what? I hope I can find it, because I thought the guy was a kook, and I put it in a drawer. But that night, I went back and I found it. And the next time I had to bring them some groceries and some dinner, I wore it. And I saw that, like, dark energy, and, you know, the stuff, poltergeist stuff was happening. And I went down and got into my car, and I felt like a shadow was following me. And I just held that medallion, and that priest's face came into my head, and he said, son, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be all right. And by the time I got home, you know, that dark thing was gone. So let's talk a little bit about the album itself. So at Elektra at this time, you know, basically Tom Werman was brought in to be the head of A&R. and a new chairman came on board, and he decided to bring Roy Thomas Baker, which made me really happy that I had worked with RTB on that first Motley record and remixing the leather record to give it a bigger sound for radio. So it's like Werman was my buddy. I used to go to his house on Sundays, and he would do Sunday brunches for anyone in the music business and feed everybody. It's no wonder he started a bed and breakfast. So anyway, Cody, it's coming. I promise you. I just want to talk about Shout at the Devil, the album, for a second here, maybe 3-4 minutes. So anyway, RTB now is the head of A&R, and, you know, Werman, I'm like, you know what? Werman should produce the album. But I had a lot of arguments with Werman because he wanted to use the engineer that did Nugent and Cheap Trick and all this stuff, and, you know, I didn't feel like that would be edgy enough. So Roy's engineer was a guy named Jeff Workman, and I thought, you know what, if I could get Roy's engineer, hand-picked engineer, to work with Werman, we would make the perfect record. And I think when you listen to Shout at the Devil today, it's about as perfect of a hard rock metal record as you're going to get. So that's a little story about that. The record was released on September 26th, 1983, and Margie, thanks for that. Nikki Sixx told the same story. I'm glad, you know, because truth is truth, right? So when somebody backs up what you say, truth is truth. So I did something really special, and some of you I know, if not all of you, and you go back and watch it, you've seen my cookies video, and you know, where I show the autographs that the band did for my mom. Well, guess what? We released Shout at the Devil on September 26th, 1983. Well, September 26th is also my mom's birthday. Thus, whenever she was in LA, she would make the Crue cookies, and it was like my first girlfriend, my first band, my first signing, and Mom was very supportive. And those guys loved her cookies so much, they would always ask me if Mom was in town, and you can go back and watch that video, and you can see what they wrote to her. It was very special. So we recorded it at Cherokee Studios. These are the songs that came off it that were played on the radio. You got The Looks That Kill, Helter Skelter, Too Young to Fall in Love, of course, Shout at the Devil, and Red Hot. And Red Hot was the first song that ever got played live off of Shout at the Devil. And I want all you guys to blow up Nikki Sixx's official social media. And when he does the Vegas thing and these other shows coming up, tell him you want to hear Red Hot, because it's like one of their greatest songs. I begged him to play it on the stadium tour, but they never could fit it in. He's kind of told me that they will put it in, but the more of you that bug Nicky to play Red Hot, maybe he'll actually do it. Thumbs up to Camden, Johnny, Susie, Dale, Outdoor Life, Matt, and Matt. I appreciate all you guys coming in, and you haven't missed the unboxing. It's still coming up. One of my favorite arguments in the music business was fighting with Elektra Records to give me a gatefold jacket. And I think you got to admit that, you know, let me grab this. I mean, what would this record be, right, without the gatefold jacket? I'm going to show it to you now. Hopefully you can see this. So that picture was taken by Barry Levine, a really famous photographer. He did a lot of work for Kiss. And when I was talking earlier about the cartoonist from San Diego, this is where Barry Levine was able to capture on photograph the comic book characters that the cartoonist, the teenager from San Diego, created for them with the cartoons. So my biggest argument was getting the label to do this gatefold jacket. And the last argument was to emboss the pentagram on it. And remember, it's not Shout with the Devil, it's Shout at the Devil. And that was the result of, we had a crazy party up at RTB's house. And Nikki had borrowed, some say stole, a friend's Porsche. She crashed it. And it was kind of like the the unfortunate experience of that accident and being in the hospital is probably one of the reasons Nikki finally agreed to change it to Shouting at the Devil as opposed to Joining the Devil. The band actually, this is what's crazy, you know, the band did 5 shows with Kiss, and they got kicked off the tour because Gene Simmons said, yeah, these guys are even too vulgar for Kiss, to open for Kiss. And of course, you know, Gene Simmons is no angel or saint either, right? So the other thing, okay, Retire Happy joined us, Deborah, Ronnie, Noel, Kate, and April. I'm happy you're all here, more and more. It makes me not want to rush the unboxing because I know people really want to see that. Another little thing, there's a song called Bastard on Shout at the Devil, and I'm bringing this up because that song is why Tipper Gore, Vice President Al Gore's wife, went after all the hard rock bands with vulgar language, and we ended up having to put the explicit stickers on the records because of Bastard. And the funny story that goes with this is, so I'm actually having dinner with Bill Clinton in the White House, and he gets the Secret Service or whomever, his aide, you know, they come and get him and they take him, and he goes, listen, Tom, I'm real sorry, I'm going to have to go. There's something going on in the world. But he said, I spoke to the Vice President, and Vice President Gore will be here shortly to have dessert with you and finish the dinner. So, I mean, it's amazing how these guys get debriefed and briefed and whatever, you know. So Vice President Gore comes, and he looks at me and goes, oh, hey, Tom, I'll bet you know my wife, Tipper. You probably don't like her much, do you? And I'm like, no, I love your wife, man. Are you kidding me? He goes, what do you mean you love her? How so? And I said, with all due respect, Mr. Vice President, I said, because of your wife, we sold millions of more records. And I'll tell you what, we even put the explicit sticker on records that had no bad language on them to sell more of them. So, anyway, that's my little Al Gore story and Tipper Gore and those explicit stickers. Hey, did any of you actually buy records because that vulgar language explicit content sticker was on the record? Did it actually work? And one of my favorite Vince Neil quotes is, and this is really funny, he said that Shout at the Devil is what happens when H.P. Lovecraft, and you can search H.P. Lovecraft, he's a great sort of occult, scary, you know, science fiction writer. But Vince said that Shout at the Devil is what happens when H.P. Lovecraft and the Beelzebub visit your house. And one of the kooky things the Vatican priest said to me when he gave me this thing he'd had around his neck for 60 years, he said that I would run into the Beelzebub. And that's what I thought I ran into when the poltergeist events were happening at Lita Ford and Nikki Sixx's apartments. Let's see here. Brian, thank you. I appreciate that. Brian said, I'm having a great show. I'm glad you're all here. Obviously, there's more than a couple. I was thinking maybe only a couple of people would be here, but I'm glad. I'm happy to provide entertainment. And please, if anybody watched the stream from the final Black Sabbath Ozzy show and GNR and all those other great bands, please, tell me how great it was, because I did not have the service up here in this hot cabin to do it. So I had a couple of other stories, but I think I'm going to unbox. And then don't go away after the unboxing, because I'm going to tell some stories. So here is this gigantic box, right? And let's talk about some of the statistics on the back of the box. Certifications: 4 times platinum in the US and Canada, 3 times platinum in Australia. Went to 17 in the US, 18 in Finland, 23 in Canada, number 59 in Switzerland, 85 in Australia. Shout at the Devil was number 30 as a single. Looks to Kill was 54. Let's see, number 12. Too Young to Fall in Love, and man, I mean, this record had a lot of hits on it. It's really the thing that broke them through.